Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builders Supply. This video is to bring you a closer look at the Stanley number IHTCB199. Can't really see that label. 5x4.5 and a 32D finish. This is a not unusual hinge. Let's just take a look at it. If you found this video searching for the part number, then you probably already know what you're looking for. So what this is simply is a quite heavy-duty hinge, something that you're going to use in an application that would probably be behavioral health, maybe a hospital, some application where you had a very wide or tall or heavy or all of those components, where you were using 5-inch because of those, probably the width of the door and the weight. You needed the thicker gauge, which would be the 90, part of the 199 in the part number, but you also needed what would be the institutional or hospital tip here as well. Okay, so let's just take some basic dimensional properties and we'll talk about where exactly you'll use this. This is a 5x4.5. The height is the first dimension on hinges. You don't want to let the true meaning of how hinges are sized escape you when you're dealing with such expensive hinges, is the bottom line. This is a 5x4.5, which means it's 5-inch tall and 4.5-inch wide. The height is the first dimension on hinges. And this hinge is a heavyweight, which means it's 190 thousandths, so my caliper plate is not completely flat in all areas, but 187, yeah, it's within tolerance. That's what we call a heavyweight hinge. So where are you going to use this? And I'll probably beleaguer the whole height first and width next, so I apologize in advance. Where are you going to use this hinge? Let's talk about that now. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. Okay, where are you going to use this hinge? You're going to use this again probably well, you can use it anywhere, but you're not going to just use this hinge on the back of a strip mall. There's little argument to make, especially for a hospital tip. But for standard doors, you're not going to use a 5-inch, you're not going to use heavyweight, you're not going to use solid stainless steel. So this type of hinge is really going to be intended for those applications that require those. When you go to, I think the textbook, the industry textbook says doors wider than 3'6", go to 5-inch. I usually like to use, and I think if the door is wider than 3.0, go to a heavyweight, and if it's wider than 3'6", go to 5-inch tall hinges. Well, when the door is wider than 3 foot, I like to consider a taller hinge. Possibly not a heavyweight hinge, but certainly a 5-inch hinge versus 4.5. It's known that a 5-inch hinge is about 20-some% more efficient at carrying the load of the door than a 4.5-inch when it's 5-inch versus 4.5. So I like to give the door that ability, the hinge that ability to do its job. When you get wider, or if you go from 18 to 16 gauge, I like to start thinking about thicker hinge leaves. I've seen hinges bent, just purely bent. So when you get something that is 3'6", for sure we need to start thinking about heavyweight hinges. Or if it's 16 gauge versus 18 gauge, or even heavier, you really need to start thinking about the confluence of taller, thicker. My rule of thumb would be this: 3.0 doors, 18 gauge, those are going to be 4.5-inch tall. You get wider than 3 foot, I'm going to want to use a heavier gauge hinge. I like 3'6" and bigger, I'll always specify 5-inch. And if it's a heavy door, I'll go with a heavyweight hinge for sure, meaning it's 16 gauge or heavier. The issue that you bump into where you're not going to see these 5-inch hinges is not many people stock doors and frames prepped for 5-inch hinges, so that would be a limiting factor. The outline might say use a 5-inch or use a 5-inch in heavyweight, but you don't stock that material, or your distributor doesn't stock it, and you don't have the factory lead time, so you're going to succumb to what is stock. Now, generally, doors and frames can be convertible from standard weight to heavyweight. By all means, use heavyweight if you can. It's 50% thicker. So this hinge it's literally 50% thicker. This hinge in a standard weight, an IHTC, which they don't make, it would be a 191. That'd be 140 thousandths thick. 140 thousandths times 1.5 is 190. So you're literally dealing with a hinge that's 50% thicker. The door itself, okay, will lead you to this hinge. The base material of stainless, that's going to be something specifically in a hospital application or an application where things are being continually cleaned. You'll want a non-ferrous base material for that. The 199 means many things. It does, and one of those many things is a non-ferrous base material. Now, the hospital tip, their catalog says to deter hangings. I think that's no longer a politically correct way to phrase it. It would be called ligature resistant. The point is anything that you try to put on top of this hinge with any weight, it's going to fall off. These hinges are inherently security pin. You won't ever need to order a hospital tip hinge and an NRP. You would never need to do that. This hinge has been welded in, ground down. This is permanently set. Okay, cannot be manipulated at that point. Now, this hinge is also available with some other security features, and in fact, this hinge that I ordered it with the security stud. It didn't come in with a security stud, so we're going to get those reordered, but I'll describe that in a moment. You'll note that this hinge has some extra welding that's been done to it. That's atypical. You don't really see that. You will not see that in standard hinges, but that's going to keep that hinge leaf because it's been perforated. You know, the material's been cut, so it's not making a lot of contact. So where you still have contact with the barrel, obviously it's being welded into place, and that's what all of that there is for. Honestly, I would like to have seen a cleaner weld, and I say that only because I wouldn't say that I'm a great welder, but I do possess the skill, so I feel like I can walk the walk as well, and I would prefer to see a cleaner bead down in here. It's rare that I would say something disparaging, and this is not disparaging. I'm saying I'd like to see a cleaner bead there. This is an extremely expensive hinge, and I'd like it to look better. When nobody cares what hinges look like, I feel when a hinge is so expensive, it ought to look good as well. It ought to do its job, and it ought to look good. It has a stamp on the back here, IHTCB199. That's a nice thing that you will find on high-end hinges. They'll put that stamping on the back. And then, of course, it has a nice petite logo, Stanley CB. This is a CB hinge in the sense that it's concealed bearings. So between these bearing between where the barrel of the hinge meets, you don't see any anti-friction devices, no bearing packets, because it's concealed into the design of the hinge. You could call it ball bearing. It would be accurate to call it concealed bearing is the bottom line. Okay? That's what we're dealing with here. Now, this is going to include screws because of the application, behavioral health most likely. You're going to get wood screws and machine screws, but the difference here is you're going to get pin torques. I don't know the size. I will ask the factory what size that is, and I will update that. I have created a note for myself to find out what the story is with that. Number 12, threaded to the head by 1.25 inch wood screws. They're really sheet metal screws. And then the 12/24 flat undercut head machine screws. Again, all pin torques. And we'll get that driver size that you need, a T18 or a T12. I don't recall. We'll find out what the story is. It's hard to argue to use this hinge in any other application other than that behavioral health where you've got huge, heavy, high-frequency volume doors. Listen, this hinge will last for... You throw this onto the back door of a strip mall, maybe less the hospital tip. But no, no one's going to drive. If you've got an outswing door in the back of a coffee shop, no one's going to drive that pin out to try to get in. Or maybe a bank. You know, a bank would be a good a bank and a strip mall would be a good application for this because, I mean, these pins are irreparably made so they can't be removed. Wider, heavier, higher frequency use. Absolutely. Let's switch to the screen view and let's take a closer look at some of the supporting, all of the supporting information, not just some of it. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. Okay, here is the item that we are looking at. Let's quickly take a look at the images that we have uploaded here as well that will allow us to better understand what we're working on. Here's the label. This, like I said earlier, I ordered it SRS, but it did not ship that way, so here we go. That's the hinge with its screw package. Another version of it, or another view of it. Closed. You can see the profile of the hospital tip. The back side. The logo up front, a close-up of the base material and finish. How that's treated. It's not unusual to see a little void there from the welding. The other end was perfectly clean. Obviously, we would want Stanley to be getting that completely filled when they grind back. You know, that's an opportunity for things to leak inside of there is the bottom line. If it, you know, I'm not going to return that hinge for that. And frankly, when you look at it, it's only because cameras are so good these days. You look at it with the naked eye and it looks just like a black blemish. But nonetheless, if it was critical, if I was dealing, my official stance is that is substandard and that needs to be either replaced or repaired, would be my guess. Some people may not notice it. I do. And like I said earlier, if you're paying a lot of money for a hinge, it should do the job and look good as well. Here's your screw package, your wood screws, your machine screws, that Torx head that's there. Now, extended description down below, specially designed for detention facilities. This does fall under their detention hardware category, which I didn't mention earlier. The Torx on the screws does lead us away from behavioral health more. Well, the Torx on the screws definitely includes detention facilities. Hospital tip slope ends deter hangings. That would be called ligature resistant. It is a full mortise hinge. What that means is, and I usually show it, but I didn't this time. This hinge the bend that's here, how the leaf is bent, that's what makes it full mortise. How you bend the hinge leaf, the steel, in relationship to the barrel itself, is the DNA of the hinge. How you bend it, whether it be raised barrel or swing clear for bevel doors or square doors or full surface, how you bend the hinge defines it. So that is a full mortise. They say that it's steel base. That's incorrect. We'll get that corrected to say stainless steel base. The gauge is .190. That's considered heavyweight. It is 5 knuckle. Concealed bearing lifespan. I think that's supposed to be lifespan. Maybe not. Lifespan. Bearing for trouble-free, long life. No oil, no grease, no maintenance. Stainless steel, hardened and completely concealed pin. Here is a template, and this template, its use really is, and they do have the IHTCB199. Its value to you is to show you where the holes for the screws are. Is just the bottom line. Okay, it'll show you where those are at, and then it will give you the F dimension, which is the leaf length for this 5x4.5, which is 1 in 23/32. There's also a link below this video to the cut sheet, and here it is. You can do the same hinge in a steel base heavyweight, that'd be the 168. It's the same hinge, except it's made of steel and then finished to whatever finish you specify. Much of this is a duplication. Hinges can be furnished with a concealed switch or a current conducting feature. So in terms of passing electricity through it, you can have a switch that's in there that will either open or close the circuit depending on how it's wired. Then you can also pass low voltage through the hinge as well with their CE option. The shear resistance stud, that actually, the shear resistance stud, based on the image, I'm going to say there's two ways that manufacturers do these studs. I'm going to say the way that Stanley does it is as follows. We already have a security pin hinge. You can't drive the pin out. So we have an NRP because some studs sit here. And when you close the hinge, there is a hole that's prepped in the other leaf where that nestles into. But I believe what Stanley does on this is that stud is back here. And then you drill a hole into the hinge leaf for that stud. The point being is, if you were to somehow on a hinge drive the pin out, doesn't matter, you're still not going to drop the door out because the leaves are mechanically locked into the hole prep in the door and the hole that's been prepped in the frame. And in the Miami hotel in the Miami airport in the American terminal, the doors to the vestibule, they're NRP and they're security stud. I noticed that stuff because I noticed that stuff. So it's not a reverse stud like this, which I believe this is. But belt and suspenders approach to security when it comes to hinges. The table down here shows what they'll do it in, either 4.5 by 4.5 or 5 by 4.5. And here's a suggested specification. If you need to convey to someone what your requirements are in a specification, this is the information that a door consultant or an architect would use. Now there's a link below this video as we wrap this video up to the manufacturer's page, which is right here. From here you can pull up not only all of the Stanley products we sell by means of this horizontal navigation, but also a link to the manufacturer's website, as well as a link to the full product catalog. The one that I like to use is this older 2010 full product catalog. I just don't think the new catalog is as slick. I think I'm just used to the old one. I don't think Stanley has evolved their hinges in the last 10 years drastically to where I'm forced to use a new catalog. But the old one seems to work, and what's remarkable about it is and many hinge manufacturers do an exceptional job when it comes to encyclopedic introductions to hinges. So in the Stanley catalog, general hinge information, they go on for pages to tell you everything about hinges. Whether you are an architect, a consultant, a distributor, a manufacturer, a little old lady from Pasadena, you will be enlightened to review this information because everything you ever needed to know is here. And here's that shear resistant stud, by the way, the SRS. And there you go, shear resistant stud, SRS. Now this hinge isn't an SRS, but if it were an SRS, it would have these studs attached to the back. I think they're mechanically fastened, so there may be a screw head on the opposite side. But I would think in a detention application, you're probably not going to see evidence that they're there, would be my guess. Security stud, that's the standard one where the leaves are brought together. You can't separate them. So as you continue on through the general hinge information, here's raised barrel, here's wide throw, discussions on swagging, how it changes the type of hinge that it is. And just a really great job when it comes to, hey, you deal with hinges, here's everything you ever thought you knew and everything you didn't know and everything you'll ever be asked. Most hinge manufacturers actually have a great introduction. What's really interesting is I would like every manufacturer to have such general information. Let's say door closers are usually pretty good, but not so with panic devices. It'd be nice to have a Wikipedia, so to speak, on every hardware type, like overhead stops. We kind of get the picture of what they do, and some manufacturers do a better job than others. LCN does a really good job with door closers. I'm sure that, Stanley, Dorma does as well. I don't have their catalog in front of me. I guess what I'm trying to say is this is where I go to when I need clarification. This and another manufacturer's catalog I'll go to when it comes to this information. Let's wrap up this video on camera. If you've made it this far into this video, you must be determined to see it through to the end, and we appreciate your hanging in there with us and watching this entire video. It means a lot. It takes a lot of work to create these videos in the sense that it's time taken away from doing other things. However, the advantage for me personally of creating these videos is the fact that it does allow myself to either learn about something new, to reacquaint myself with something, or to reinforce what I believe that I already know. Any comments that you might leave down below would be greatly appreciated. Thank you. In conclusion, I will admit up front I'm quite partial to Stanley. I do like the caliber of their hinges. What I don't like is it seems like everything that I need to order is special order. I think I do far more specialty hinges like these than I do just standard hinges, whether it be a raised barrel or a wide throw or some reverse spring hinge or a swing clear hinge. I seem to get those orders. Their boxes will usually contain some cardboard shims. They are used to separate the hinge leaves from each other very well, but they're really in there to allow you to cant or tip the door in some sort of way. If it's a fire door, don't use cardboard shims, use only steel shims to move that door around. Or if you're going to use cardboard, as the old joke goes, use your competitor's business card. It'd be a violation of the integrity of the fire rating of the opening to have cardboard used as a shim. If you have any questions on the IHTCB199 hinge or any other weird hinge from Stanley or unusual hinge, please let me know. I'm partial to them because I like their fit and finish. It's unusual to see a couple of welds that I say, it should have been done better. But the quality of the finish, they've got a good command over the finish. The material, whether it be black or polished brass, steel or stainless or brass bronze based material, their stuff usually looks really good. And I won't say that for every other manufacturer. There's one major manufacturer that I think stopped caring about the finish and could be doing a far better job. But Stanley's pretty consistent, and their name is rather universal. Any questions on this or any other Stanley product, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you. Again, thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up. Please subscribe and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.